Well, greetings. I'm JB Herren with the Old School Gun School, and we're looking forward to our law conference this year. And so, law conference comes this year in November, and I'll give you more details on that as we go along. And one of our speakers that we've been trying to get for some time is Mr. John Hearne. And so, I've been John's student on different occasions and wanted him to come and teach for our school. And so, we finally got our details put together, and that happens this November. And so, we're looking forward to that. And so here in the studio, I have John. And John, what can we look forward to? I'm glad you're coming, buddy. What can we look forward to? What are some of the things we'll talk about this November?
So the presentation I'm doing is defeating violent criminals, an academic and tactical analysis. What I try to do with this presentation, and from the feedback I get, I do it pretty well, is I try to give the students a lot of information, data that they can actually use, and more importantly, teach them how to get the information for themselves, right? So we'll
Uh,
spend half the presentation gathering information that's relevant to the topic of violent criminals. How do they interact with the public? How do they select victims? All those kind of academic topics. And once we've got a pretty good handle on all that stuff, we'll spend the afternoon, the second 4 hours, involved in two case studies that probably best illustrate any lessons that I would want to teach you as far as interacting with violent criminals, the realities of criminal violence, skill at arms, that sort of thing. So when you put the two together, you leave with a great understanding of the topic in both a academic, informational kind of manner, as well as some very solid practical takeaways that you can implement into your daily life to make yourself and your family safer.
uh, uh, my old boss once told me, he says, JB, uh, you can learn from what happens to others. You can learn from mistakes and experiences of others because you'll never live long enough to have all that experiences by yourself. And so, true enough, uh, the situational analysis and case studies are important to us because, unlike maybe the written letter of the law, the black letter of the law, it's a case. Maybe it's like Aesop's fables for gun law. Remember Aesop?
I heard some of his stories. I remember the one about the crow and the monkey and stuff like that. So it does
Yeah.
ring a bell.
And so he also did like the tortoise and the hare. And
Yes.
so old time learning. And so he had a story to tell. So he told the story, and we enjoyed the story. And because we listened to the story, we got the message that was embedded in the story. And so that made it fun. It made it easy to pass along, easy to remember. And so it got passed along. And so that's what we seem to like most of all is having those case studies. Okay, I remember that. I remember what happened with that. Maybe I can learn something from that. And so I think your case studies will be invaluable to our class this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite frankly, if you've been in the gun community for any duration, there's a lot of mythology and bad information out there. So a lot of what we'll do is, correct both the incorrect academic information as well as correct some mythology. The two events we're going to discuss are the Newhall Massacre and the FBI's Miami firefight. And there's just a lot of bad information that circulates around both of those events. I've gone to a lot of research, speaking with different people that were involved. I was able to speak to Ed Morales, the hero of that fight. I also was able to, along with Mike Wood, get the original crime scene photos of the Newhall Massacre, and those are incorporated into the event as well. So you should get probably the most factual account of these events that you're going to be able to find in any kind of public domain.
Wow. We're sure looking forward to that. And so, why should someone attend this? What will they get out of it? And why take the time and the money to show up, maybe travel to get here? What will be the biggest offset for that?
I think that the practical takeaways are the big. I have a bit of a research background, and I love information for the sake of information, but that probably doesn't describe most people, right? Most people want to know, what can I do today? What can I implement today? What changes can I make that are going to make demonstrable changes in my life? And one of the things I try really hard to do is to make sure that the presentation is basically chocked full of those takeaways. So whether it's some very concrete example, for instance, where we would need to conduct our weapon manipulations, or how do criminals? We know with a high degree of certainty how criminals select victims. Well, if
Oh,
you know how criminals select victims, you can reverse engineer that and make sure that you or not guarantee you won't get selected, but greatly reduce your odds of being selected as a potential victim of a violent crime. And you're going to win 100% of every fight you don't get into. So I think the important thing are the practical takeaways. I'll answer a lot of curiosities. Well, what about this? What about that along the way? But that's more of an idle curiosity. But when for instance, that just simply how you walk is a big determiner of whether you get selected for criminal predation. That's a huge practical takeaway that you can start to implement into your daily business and share with those that you care.
Wow. Well, we are looking forward to seeing you. And so thanks for getting us into your schedule. And we'll see you at this year's law conference. And so thanks for coming. We'll talk to you then.
Understanding the law, when it's okay to shoot. I have lost count of the number of hours I have been in law classes, and even though it's called the same class, it's never the same.
Old School Gun School is a complete package. We're training in depth for the safe use of these firearms that we hope we never ever have to use.
When I need to use it, when I don't need to use it, and what to do afterwards.
This information is essential, and you need to have this information to make good decisions.
The other thing that's really impacted me was how much JB talks about conflict avoidance, how to de-escalate a situation, when somebody's being aggressive, how do you bring them back down, how do you move away, get out of the situation. So it's not about escalating the conflict, it's about de-escalating the conflict, trying to avoid conflict as much as possible.
I'm more careful with how I handle my guns now. I also am more comfortable with handling the gun.